asset management is running of the business, right? We buy apartment complexes really of any size. And you could take a lot of these concepts down to a single family house. But when you're buying a property for 2, 5, 10, 18 million was our last purchase, these are businesses that you're buying. And you need someone to run that business. And so the biggest mistake you could make would be to say, well, our property manager is going to handle it, because a property manager and an asset manager have two very different sets of roles and responsibilities. The property manager is the executor, sort of the hand on the paper, on the pen, right? So they are doing what the asset manager and the ownership team wants them to do. They are the ones signing leases, filling, evaluating tenants, handling the day-to-day operations of the property. The asset manager is in the strategic role. So I'm looking at KPIs for my property. I'm looking at how occupied are we? What units do we have coming vacant? And do I have enough construction support? Are my funds in place? Cash management is a huge piece of asset management, but also business planning, forecasting. Where are we now, but where are we in 6 months? Are we going to hit the returns that our investors need, that we're projecting? All these pieces that go into the running of the business and go into asset management. And so that's the key difference there.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am your host, Yona Weiss, and with me today, it gives me pleasure to have Justin Fraser, all the way from sunny New Jersey. What's going on, Justin?
How are you, man? Actually, today is sunny, so you got that one right. The last 4 days have been rainy and cold, but today, sunny. I'll take it.
Awesome. It's great to have you. I mean, just a little context. I'd love to give people a little introduction before we get into the conversation here. But Justin's been a real estate investor, active for 7 years already, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
So he started single families like a lot of people, flipping houses like a lot of people, myself included. And in 2018, he founded a multifamily syndication business, okay? Which, if you don't know what multifamily syndication means, it means raising money from others to participate and join together to buy real estate. So multifamily is a great thing. We've worked together. Justin is now partnering with incredible people in the space. Currently, 6 apartment complexes, so large apartment buildings. Think about that, over 1,000 units altogether. Just closed on a huge deal a few months ago out in North Carolina, and we'd love to, just jump into that. Besides for that, he is the host of the True Multifamily podcast, which we'll leave if you're watching the video, you see in the background, right? His brand over there. But if you're just listening in, we'll make sure to put a link in the show notes so you can check out the True Multifamily podcast. I had the pleasure of being a guest on that as well, and some amazing content all about asset management and about what goes on behind the scenes in multifamily. So without further ado, Justin.
What an introduction. Thank you. Yes. I'd love to be here. Thank you. And yes, your episode is actually, no BS, one of our top listened to episodes. So thank you for that. Thank you for all your contributions.
Very cool.
In our business, to the podcast, as we were just talking before, through social media connections. I mean, just phenomenal. So I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's incredible. Social media, like you mentioned, we talked a little bit before. It's a way to bring people together on such an incredible scale, like is almost unimaginable before, right? And even with the podcasting itself, we're able to speak to people. I mean, listen, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people going to be listening to this episode. Whenever we tell them, whatever we're going to be talking to them, they're going to get a glimpse into, you and I, and that's going to make that connection all the more real if we, then go ahead and have a conversation with whoever the listener might be, which I get people reaching out to me all the time. Hey, I just listened to you on such and so-and-so's podcast. Loved it. Love to have a conversation. And I think that's really the goal. One of the main goals of podcasting, for me at least, is to scale those relationships, right? To be able to talk to people at scale. What about you? What's the goal? I mean, I know you're involved in PodMAX also, which we'll talk a little bit about that. What's the main goal in podcasting?
I'm a partner in Honor Brands and with the folks that we just spoke about, podcast production company. And we for a long time, my partners over there were like, you need a podcast, you need a podcast. And I just held off, and they all had podcasts, and I get it. And I understood the value. But for me, it wasn't until I had alignment with my business and my mission that I said, okay, now I'm ready for a podcast. And it was just sort of like one afternoon, I was just thinking, and I realized, oh, I was listening to, I'm sure some podcasts, but no one is speaking enough about asset management, which is what happens after we close on a property, the running of the business, right? And so for me, that's what I do on our team, and I know we'll get into that, but I thought, okay, the first step is educating other people about this, because, there's tons about raising money, popping the champagne. We're all excited. We close this great deal. But what happens after that? There's
Right.
so much that goes into it. And that's really the mission of my podcast, is to talk about that. And so I wanted to educate people about that fact, which is in alignment with what I'm doing on an everyday basis. But it also selfishly allows me to have great one-on-one conversations with people like you.
Yeah.
And, for me, honestly, like, I do check the stats, but I try not to sort of get into it. But if I have 10 listens or 100 listens or 1,000 listens, that's the educational side. That's great. But for me, the hour that you and I get to sit here and have a conversation, and then the hour on my show and the hour on your show, now we've had 2 hours of direct contact with each other. And,
right.
We're forming a stronger bond that you really can't measure that. You
Exactly.
can't measure that in downloads or likes or stats, because we are building a relationship. And then you times that by all the other podcast hosts, right, and all the guests you have, really just expands that. And so you're building that stronger network. And I found that to be extremely helpful. And then the third thing is I'm learning for myself, right? So I'm learning about asset management from some folks that are really doing it. And I'm learning from their mistakes, and I'm learning from their successes, and I'm trying to emulate them. And so that helps me do what I do better. And so that's why I didn't want a podcast until sort of everything fell into alignment, and I knew I could push forward on that one path.
Absolutely. And that's a really great point. I mean, all of those I actually agree with entirely in terms of my podcast experience as well. But that last point, where you're able to sit down and have a conversation with those people and really learning about your own business and about how to take that. Because for me, having mentors and having those people that, you surround yourself with and learn from, I learned the best like that, not sitting in a classroom, not necessarily listening to, passively to a podcast, but actually having those relations with those people that I can go ahead and ask that question, right? If you're listening to a podcast and you have a question that comes up in your mind, you can't go ahead and ask that right away.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can reach out and follow up like that. But if you're the one that's having that conversation live, there's where the opportunity to
I
learn
do that a
really comes
lot,
in.
by the way. I'll be in the car, like, no, you didn't, one step further. I needed one more question,
Right, for sure.
So now with the show, it's great, because then I can go that one step forward and ask that question, because you're in control of your show. But so I do love it. It is time consuming. It is something that I learned last year. I've had it now for just over a year. And over the course of the year, I went some weeks where I launched 3 episodes a week, and then I went 2 months without an episode, right? And so I was very hot or cold. I averaged at the end 1 episode a week, but it was very clustered. And so my goal for this year is just more consistency. Q4 last year, very consistent. And so we're going to keep that rolling, 1 episode a week, and just consistent, repeatable content in front of people.
Yeah.
And that's all you got to do.
That's great. And tell me a little bit about this, the on-air brands, the PodMAX that you helped, that you're a part of.
Yeah. So my partner, Eric, started On Air Brands, and it's really transformed into a podcast production agency and, social media company. And so from that birthed this awesome event called PodMAX. And so if you are a business owner looking to get your name out on multiple podcasts, all these great benefits of podcasting, but from the guest side or the host side, by the way, it's one day where you can go and be on a whole bunch of shows in one day. These are top rated business shows, real estate shows. We have different sort of topics. There's a big real estate event coming up later this month, but we have guests like Hal Elrod was a keynote at one of the more recent ones. So it's sort of like a mini conference, but instead of going into sessions, and learning, you're getting yourself on these great, awesome podcasts.
That's such a cool concept.
Yeah. And for the hosts, if you're a host, that's great, because you're getting content. It's free to host. So you get all this great content, and you get to sit in and listen to Hal Elrod or ask him questions. But for the guests, I mean, so much value in not only the interviews that you're on, but all the networking, all the extras that come with it. And so it started off as an in-person event. And we did a few last year, 2018. And then obviously as 19, as 2020 hit, COVID, we went virtual and it just exploded. And so now we've got awesome hosts and guests from all over the country. Call it PodMAX Global. And because really we have people from different countries, and it's really just blown up. So it's a really, really great way to get the word out about your show or about your business. And podmax.co, if you'll allow me to
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
just check
For
out
sure.
podmax.co and get all the information there.
Very cool. Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
meaning to check that out. I met with, as I mentioned to you, with Eric Cabral and his partner Josh McCowan on their podcast, Capital Hacking, and they're awesome people. So that sounds like a great opportunity for anyone who's listening to this that also has a podcast or is wants to be a guest on podcasts. Sounds like a really great opportunity.
It's a win-win for everybody.
For sure. I love to switch gears a little bit right now because we're talking about asset management. That's what your podcast is all about. But how often do you get to talk about asset management, right? And people ask you the questions besides when you're a guest on a podcast, right?
Right. Right.
So here we are. But I really do have a few questions that for me personally, I want to kind of dig into, because the first question right off it's just something that I want to learn for myself, because multifamily investing is something I am more actively shifting into. And the asset management side is kind of like you said, it's not the most glorious, right? It doesn't come with all the fanfare, but it's probably the most important or integral part of sustaining those communities once you have them under your belt. So first question for you is just if you could just describe what's involved in the asset management process, what goes into that in terms of all those moving parts.
Yeah. So asset management is running of the business, right? We buy apartment complexes really of any size, and you could take a lot of these concepts down to a single family house. But when you're buying a property for 2, 5, 10, 18 million was our last purchase, these are businesses that you're buying, and you need someone to run that business. And so the biggest mistake you could make would be to say, well, our property manager is going to handle it, because a property manager and an asset manager have two very different sets of roles and responsibilities. The property manager is the executor, sort of the hand on the paper, on the pen, right? So they are doing what the asset manager and the ownership team wants them to do. Right. They're the ones signing leases, billing, evaluating tenants, handling the day-to-day operations of the property. The asset manager is in the strategic role. So I'm looking at KPIs for my property. I'm looking at how occupied are we? What units do we have coming vacant? And do I have enough construction support? Are my funds in place? Cash management is a huge piece of asset management, but also business planning, forecasting. Where are we now, but where are we in 6 months? Are we going to hit the returns that our investors need, that we're projecting? Right. All these pieces that go into the running of the business and go into asset management. And so that's the key difference there.
Sure. And it sounds like anyone who has experience in running a business would be best fit for, that kind of role in a team, because obviously multifamily investing is really a team sport, as we've, talked about before.
Yeah.
That's the, the best kind of role to fit. So what was your experience before you jumped into real estate in terms of running? It sounds like you had experience in running your own businesses beforehand.
Yeah, I actually was a project manager. So I was a software project manager. Yeah, exactly. I managed software design and development projects for years, out of college, and for about 7-8 years after that. While I was doing that, I started building a rental portfolio on the side. Nights, weekends, vacation days. And so eventually built it up to the point where I did a syndication while I was working full time. And, those skills really translate: managing people, managing budgets, timelines, schedules, all of that from the project management perspective immediately translates to asset management, right? But then there's another level of it, which is understanding sort of what the property manager is doing, understanding the whole real estate side of it. But I was doing that on the side anyway. And sort of that was my passion, and my skill set was the project management. And honestly, I did it for a long time, but I don't really care about software project management. The kind of projects we were doing was not that exciting to me. They're corporate things that, interfaces that nobody ever really sees. It's all just back end. So it wasn't anything too flashy or exciting, but the skills were there, and I was managing clients and projects all over the world. And then we, as I built real estate, I got really excited about that. And so eventually they actually had layoffs 3 months after I did my first syndication. and I was part of the team that got laid off. Actually, they cut the whole team from the vice president on down, and we were put out. But
Wow.
thankfully, I had this excitement about real estate, and my first inclination was go find another job. But my wife said, hold on. We've got some savings. You're doing this. You're already doing it on the side. You were going to leave in a year or two anyway. So figure out how to do real estate, figure out what
Right.
you can do. And so that's really what kicked me into doing asset management full time with my
Wow.
team.
So what you mentioned like you were excited about real estate. So what excites you about real estate?
At first it was, I'm going to buy the single family house and it's a place to put some money and it'll make me a little bit of cash flow. And in 30 years, my tenants will have paid it off and I'll be a little bit better at retirement. And as soon as the cash flow started coming in, I was like, wow, this is powerful. Like, what am I going to do with this few $100s a month? Like, well, what if I do that again and again and again? And I got really excited about the idea of like building a business around it. And it wasn't, very quickly realized it wasn't a side thing, but the
Mhm.
thing that I wanted to do. I always wanted to run a business. I never really knew what that business was going to be. And I sort of feel like I happened into it where I was able to take my skills of what I was good at and now what I enjoy doing, which is real estate, and mesh them together.
That's awesome. Sorry. What I what I'm excited about when I hear people who are excited about real estate, a lot of times, they're talking about this, building generational wealth,
Mm,
and but very very seldom do I hear people who are like excited about the actual, process
mhm.
of it, because in the end of the day, it's work, and it's a
Yes.
business. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have this misconception that, getting real estate, it's so much fun, it's a lot of, it's so exciting, and it's a great way to make a lot of money, even though, right, even if you get into it and well, it's not a way to make a lot of money fast necessarily. But the exciting thing, I think, for me, and what excites me about it also, and I think you've expressed as well, is that number one, you get to work with incredible people who are also very growth oriented
Yep.
and are people that are driven for a greater good. Okay, we're buying apartment communities, we're trying to make the world a better place, and we're trying to make our lives, our families have a better life. But on top of that, right, it's really about creating this community, right? Not just community in terms of the apartments that you're building, but the community in terms of the people that surround you with. I mean, you talk about the podcasting community and
Hmm.
and the multifamily real estate community. All these people that I've been a guest on their podcast or had on my podcast, these are incredible, successful people that, if I was working a 9 to 5 job in a little company, like my world would be in that little company.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Here, you've opened it up and now you're partnering with, all these people. Tell me a little bit about that, because I know you don't go in it alone. You have partners on deals you've been
Absolutely.
in beforehand and are growing that. How did you find your partners, and what do you look for when you're looking for partners?
But just to go back to your point,
Yeah.
the fact that we're business owners, and chosen real estate, I mean, I feel so lucky because it's an alignment of what I'm good at and what I enjoy doing. But the choosing the people I get to work with, it is really awesome, and is something that I think maybe enough people don't give enough weight to or credit to. But I found an incredible team, and honestly, if I didn't want to work with these guys, then I could move on and find another incredible team or another partner. And so I've had partners in the past that haven't worked out so well, and you move on and you find someone that does resonate with you. But I'm able to surround myself with people that push me, that are pushing themselves, that allow me to push them, who we all bring something different to the table. And so, I mentioned I got laid off, and 3 months after that, I was hanging around with my mentor, Matt, who I know you've had on the show, Matt Faircloth, and he's got a co-working space, and I was just hanging around, like, let me figure out what I can do. And so Matt invited me to come to one of his projects that was needing some extra eyes on it, and so we road trip to North Carolina, and I just was able to start adding value immediately. Like, I'm negotiating with the contractor while he's dealing with the property manager, and
Hmm.
sort of we fell into this role of, oh, there's a missing piece on Matt's team, who Matt was just sort of him and an underwriter, and he was doing the brand building, and as you know, wrote a book and all that kind of stuff, but he was having to do like the day-to-day running the business, and that's not a great skill set for him. And so we found out that, okay, Justin can be asset manager, come in, run the business of these apartments, and Matt can be the brand and the face and go and write books for Bigger Pockets and be a great
Right.
contributor and all that, which is great. Sort of slid myself into that team. And so we've added a few more folks. So we have someone that we call the hunter who goes and finds the deals for us. And that's really most of what he does is networks with brokers, talks to property owners, finds us our next big deal.
Mm-hmm.
We have our underwriter who is super laser focused on underwriting the deals. Right. We have Matt, who is our primary capital raiser and super focused on brand building, 30,000 YouTube subscribers, all that great stuff. And then there's me, we call the hammer, the asset manager, the person that executes that business plan. And so together, we all work really well together. We all have our lane, which allows us to excel. But then we all also obviously support each other. We're all involved in all of the aspects, but we each lead a key point. And that allows us to really focus in on the businesses that we want to run within this collective partnership.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, it sounds like it would be almost impossible, if not near impossible, to do this on your own, right?
Yeah. I mean, I did my first syndication that way. I did the underwriting. I found it. I did the underwriting. I did all that. And I don't want to do that again. I'll be honest. If all my partnership blew up, I wouldn't go out on my own and do it again, start to finish, because I'm not a great underwriter. I can do it, but it's not my forte, right? I can find deals, but it's not my forte. I'm really good at what I love to do. And so I think the partnership model just makes so much sense because we can all win together. We can go buy a lot more properties. We can run a lot more properties together than on our own. Awesome. And so that's the goal. And it's been working. We had a great 2019 with 3 purchases. 2020 slowed us down a bit, but we did have our largest acquisition here in 2020, as you mentioned before. And, we've got a few offers out and some things in the pipeline right now, and it's exciting.
Very exciting. So what's the goal for 2021 if you had to put it into numbers?
Yeah, well, I have goals for different phases and aspects of my life, right? So I have personal goals. My family is moving to a new state in 2021. We're very excited about that. So thank you. We're moving down actually closer to our properties in North Carolina. But that's a personal goal as far as, the house we want to be in, the neighborhood we want to be in, the payment, the property taxes, all that kind of stuff. As you know, Jersey guy, right? It's a little crazy up here. So we have a set of like personal family goals. And then I have sort of my business goals, which is to really empower my staff. I have 2 employees now to run more of the operations of my business and take myself out of the day-to-day of the grind of like reviewing invoices and the minutia. I want to be more in the strategy role. And then our team goals is to acquire another $50 million of multifamily real estate this year. And so all those are in alignment, and we've got the team set up and the pieces in place. We just need to go find the deals.
Yeah, find the deals and execute.
Absolutely.
Right? Very exciting. Awesome. Yeah. So I want to take this time and just transition right into the final 4. So these are the 4 questions we ask every single guest towards the end of our interview. And the first question I ask everyone is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
I did work at Burger King. My first job. New Jersey allows you to work. I think I was 14, like the day 1 that I was allowed to work, I worked. Making, I don't know, $4.75 or $5 an hour or something. And man, I had the morning shift. I had to be there at like 5 a.m. I hated it. It did teach me a lot. And honestly, I'm glad I did it. I don't regret it, but I certainly wouldn't want to do that again.
Yeah. Well, I would hope not. I would think that.
Yeah. But you got to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely. And every job teaches us something. So
absolutely.
Tell me one thing it taught you.
It taught me that, sometimes you got to be the guy that gets there at 5 o'clock, 5:30 to open up the store. And there is a role for everybody on the team. And 14, 15-year-old guy that just coming in, that's what you got to do. That's awesome. Your place. And so everyone has a place and a role. And, sometimes you got to go through the grunt work to get to where you want to be.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
Second question, what is a book that you've read that's given you a paradigm shift? So I'm looking for something that's really changed your outlook.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I'm trying to think through some of the books that I've read recently. I really liked, the Miracle Morning, actually, I know I mentioned How I Read before, but it's something that I struggled with. I read it, I got it. I tried it. I didn't like it. I left it for a while, and then sort of the end of last year got back into it again. And like for some reason, like the third time around, it sunk in, and it allowed me to realize like just how I'm prioritizing. What am I prioritizing? And before I can prioritize anything else, I have to prioritize myself, my health, my mindset, my well-being. And so that has been a great shift for me towards the end of last year, where for a long time I was just focused on how do I grow this business, and it's all about like whatever it takes, nights, weekends, whatever. And now it's more about looking inside first, helping myself, and then I can help others.
Beautiful. Yeah. It's one of those books that it takes a long time to internalize. I feel the same way.
I don't know. I feel like some people just get it and they're like in it and they're doing it. And I'm like, man, 4 a.m. I just struggled for a long time. And I'm not there every day and I'm not there all the time. But a lot of the elements from it, the journaling, the exercise, the time to yourself, the reflective thought. I mean, it just, that's all about prioritizing you and taking care of yourself before you can go out into the world and help others. And so that's that paradigm shift that I finally got the third time through at the end of last year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, our third question is, what is a skill or talent that you'd like to learn?
Man, that's great. I am not that handy, I'll be honest. For as much real estate as we own and everything, I've never been someone that can sort of look at a broken sink and say, yeah, this is how we're going to fix it. I figure it out a bit. Thank God for YouTube.
Right.
But I just don't sort of have that intuition. And, I'm thankful I have a lot of great people that can do that, but I would love to be able to just have a little more knowledge on the physical handyman side of things, where I could, even just in my own personal house, forget the investments, just take care of some stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a good one to have.
Yeah.
I guess, it's something that can be learned like anything, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Working on it.
Love that. Love that. Fourth and final question, Justin, is what does success mean to you?
I love this question, because I've thought about it a lot. We're recording this beginning of a new year, and it's something that I thought about a lot at the end of last year and the beginning of this year in the goal setting and the planning. And so I feel like I achieved success in 2019 and 2020 because I mentioned this before, but my skill set is aligned with what makes me money, right? And what I enjoy doing. There's three circles, concentric circles: what I'm good at, what I enjoy doing, and what I can support my family doing.
Right.
And so it's so often that people will have one or two of those things and they're not in alignment with, you might be super passionate, but you can't make any money from it, or you make some money, but you feel dead inside. I mean, so many people go through that. And so success for me is the alignment of those three things. And so I'm so grateful that I hit that or I figured it out. So success for the first step is figuring that out and figuring out that I'm doing that. And so when those are in alignment is when I feel successful. And so then it's a matter of, great, my basic needs are met. I'm providing for my family. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So now let's help others find that as well. And so I think that the more people we can put in the center of those three circles, the better.
That's awesome. No, that's incredible. I mean, I feel very blessed as well. What I'm doing, the cost segregation stuff, I really love, and I love, enjoy doing it. It makes money, thank God, able to support my family. And, I'm good at what am I good at? I'm good at really teaching and that's what I do, my business development role. But what I've found over the course of the past half a year or so is that I really love this, right? The podcasting and this kind of interaction. If I could find a way or figure it out to make money doing this, and I know there's plenty of people doing that, right? There's some huge podcasts out there that are really money makers. To me, that would be pretty cool.
Well, you sort of have, right? In your way, because you're using this as part of your funnel and it's helping your sales. And I totally get that because you found that alignment, what you're good at. You're obviously excellent connector, right? Sounds like you enjoy it. Talking to people, networking with people. You wouldn't be doing the podcast if you didn't enjoy it, and that's great. So it's providing for you. So that's awesome. So we need more people to find that.
Yeah, 100%. And I love the three concentric circles that you brought up. I think that's incredible. I never really heard it kind of put that way, but it makes so much sense. And I appreciate that. So I just want to for our guests or our listeners. Sorry, I call our listeners guests sometimes because they
could
are,
be
right.
They can be guests. Absolutely.
You know, once we start doing this live, they'll be guests also, right?
Love it. Absolutely.
Where can our listeners find you or reach out to you?
Yeah. So the podcast is True Multifamily. The website for that is truemultifamily.show. You can start there. You find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all everywhere. So Justin Fraser on all of those, or True Multifamily.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Give us a listen. We'd love to have you.
Check it out. It's a great podcast. Highly recommended, especially if you want to learn about asset management and getting really into the nitty-gritty details of it. So thank you again, Justin. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, catching up, and I wish you a tremendous amount of success this year and going forward.
Thanks so much, Jon. I appreciate it.
All right. And to all of our listeners, remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.